I've just had the single most millennial conversation of my entire life. Good morning and welcome to Friday's OTB AM. It's Adrian Barry with you. I think I officially qualify for millennial status, despite my aged, rugged looks, but definitely in the millennial bracket is Owen Shane. Good morning to you, Owen.
Rugged looks is a very big compliment to yourself.
I didn't say rugged good looks. Let's point that out. The single most millennial conversation I've ever had has just taken place, and it was about whether it's bright or dark outside. And back now, this will make no sense to you on in so many ways. When I was a young fella, when we were sort of looking to figure out what sort of the state of play outside was it raining, was it sunny, was it bright, was it dark? We used to do this mad thing called looking out the window.
Wow.
I know, I appreciate that. A lot of people out there will be like, sort of doesn't make any sense to me. I can't believe that people once did that. But nowadays, that's not what happens.
No, it's not. Well, first of all, we don't have any windows in the studio. I am familiar with that particular app, the window app, but we don't have that in here. So if you set your Twitter settings to nighttime settings, it will tell you when it's bright outside because your Twitter colour goes from black to white. And I just saw it turn from black to white right there. So it's the first time we've been on air since the winter that it's actually been bright before we've gone on live. So that's the most fascinating thing I'm ever going to say.
Genuinely the most millennial conversation I've ever had.
Well, there you go. We all need to have a bit of youth in our lives sometimes.
So, all's good?
All is very well.
Right.
Absolutely buzzing. The National Leagues are back this weekend.
You're
It's been a long 5 months.
Killarney.
Down to Killarney on Sunday for Kerry against Tyrone.
Does it, because you will go to a good few of the league games, all of them?
Yeah, pretty much. I have a season ticket, of course, which, you know, was part of the price rises there 3 years ago.
And that was, and that the season ticket has stayed still static this season, or is
it's static this season. It went up
they
to
missed the boat essentially. Was that the?
No, like it went up to €120 for last season, and then it was €99 the previous season.
99 to 100. Geez, that's a significant jump.
Fairly large enough leap, yeah. So
still good value though. You're getting.
I think it is.
Is that entitles you to all the regular group games? Is that it?
All the league games and one free championship match. So it's not like you're making an absolute killing off it, but it's just a bit cheaper, and it also guarantees yourself an All-Ireland ticket should you go to all the games, or should you go to a certain percentage of the games. In my case, it would tend to be 100%, and then you just pay for your All-Ireland ticket, but you do get guaranteed one.
So you are going to cover the game on Sunday.
I'll be going to cover the game on Sunday.
So you're not registering your league. You're not registering you get a card or a pass or something, do you?
Yeah.
Let me know at any point where this is becoming an inappropriate conversation and you have some skullduggery going on in the background that we need to avoid. But so you get a card, is that right?
Yes.
And then you go to the ground and you scan in your card. I'm here.
Yeah, I could just do that instead of going via the press box. Like we could just stop this conversation right now, and that would also save me from a bit of trouble.
I'm with you. Very good. So you'll be down there on Sunday, live coverage of the game, and you're excited about the league. Is the other thing on your?
That's the thing. I think we'll be speaking about this later on a small bit, but I'm massively excited for the league because I think rightly football has taken a bit of a hard time over the past 8, 9, 10 months, and people tend to say, well, every football match, or the majority of the football matches that I'm watching on television, say last summer, are poor affairs. They're low scoring, they're defensive, it's not very attractive, and as a neutral I'm not actually interested in watching this particular game, and I think that's fair enough. But I think we need to remember that is the championship. The championship is the most important football conversation in the country, or most important football competition in the country, but it also happens to be the worst football competition in the country. The vast majority of the games are completely meaningless because you're putting up crap teams up against good teams, teams with far more resources than others, teams with far bigger populations than others. Whereas in the league, you have parity, you have crap pitches, but you have far better affairs. And I think Division 1, despite the fact that it's not as important as, say, 2 or 3 in terms of the general scheme of your entire year, I think is one of the best sporting competitions we have in the country. I love Division 1 of the Football League. I'll watch every single game if I could, and hopefully eventually we get to a stage where we will be able to watch every single game like an NFL Game Pass or something like that. I'm sure any football fan out there is buzzing for this weekend, but even more so if you're a fan of a county, in particular in Division 3 or 4, because really this is the most important 10 weeks or whatever it is of your year. And it's sad to say that, but it's true because you haven't a prayer of winning the All-Ireland.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a team that came in under the radar that beat the Dubs last weekend that we'll see that maybe be able to sort of
put it up to
some of these
like people
you know.
who are kind of like taking the piss out of Westmeath for celebrating that are completely wrong, because they should be, because the O'Byrne Cup is on the doorstep of the most important couple of weeks of their year. The O'Byrne Cup is something that, and when Leitrim won the FBD leagues down through the years, what was it, 2013-14, they did back-to-back or something, people were like, oh, Leitrim for Sam, but it's like, actually, hold on a minute, these are actually
the famine is over.
Well, these are actually really important from that county's perspective, that they actually have a bit of silverware. They've actually got the idea of going toe-to-toe with a team that at least is wearing the Dublin jersey. I know it's not the Dublin team, but like I think we need to actually look at this and say, well, this thing is deriving a lot of pleasure for this group of players, and but all the work they've been doing over the winter is actually worthwhile. And if it's just no O'Byrne Cup, it's just no O'Byrne Cup. But I think it's important, and I think the National League, from a Westmeath perspective, from your perspective, here until April is the most meaningful time of the year, and it's unfortunate that that's the case. But hey, championship structures.
Westmeath is to the O'Byrne Cup as Kerry is to Sam Maguire.
Well, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Like we look at it in similar fashion. Here's the Tyrone team, by the way, to take on Kerry this weekend. That came out there last night. So pretty strong looking team on.
Yeah, Kyle Coney's on the bench as well. Lee Brennan's on the bench. It's the thing with Tyrone, which they tried to kind of get off their shoulder last year, was this idea that they're very thin once you get into the bench.
Darren Canavan as well, by the way.
Darren Canavan, of course. They can't be depending on him too much this year, really. And you've got the likes of Aidan McCrory and Conor Myler there as well. Kieran McGeary as well. Like, it's a very, very strong bench, which is the most encouraging thing from a Tyrone perspective. When we did our predictions here at the start of the year, I kind of put Tyrone and Galway in the same bracket, where I think they're both going to do worse than they did last year. I think that they were helped by the fact that a couple of other counties underperformed last summer. Looking at that bench now, I wonder if I'll be revising that opinion pretty soon. I think Tyrone might have a bit of a kick in them.
They might be a little bit of Kerry of last season is the only thing about them, that some of those players are obviously, while Kyle Coney had been there before and obviously drifted off, like Darren Canavan, who by all accounts people speak very highly of, and it seems to be the second coming of his father. It might be just a little bit too early for them is the only thing, but we'll see how that advances over the course of the next while, and obviously into the championship as well. The other team that was named last night was the European Player of the Year Award 2019 nominees, a team of 15 here. You can see it on your screen, 8 of whom are Irish, 7 of whom are Irish based, I think. So it's Tadhg Byrne, Joey Carberry, Sean Cronin, Tadhg Furlong, Peter O'Mahony, Simon Zebo, Jacob Stockdale and Gary Ringrose are the Irish players to be nominated. So 8 out of 15 is not bad. It did, I have to say, when I saw it on, I was surprised by some of the inclusions.
Really?
Yeah, like just on the basis that this is the
Irish inclusions.
Yeah, 15. These are the 15 best players. You know, I know there's a little bit of sort of give and take here in terms of positions and all that kind of stuff. It's not quite like your pound for pound champion, but definitely surprised by some of the inclusions on it. You know, Simon Zebo is obviously one of the top try scorers in France and in Europe as well, by his own admission over the last few weeks, sort of admitting that he's not in the most fantastic shape, that he's enjoying the French lifestyle. Is that the euphemism? Is that how we put it? That, you know, maybe he could be a little bit trimmer, by his own admission, he was saying over the last few weeks. Sean Cronin, as you know, well as he's been doing from a try-scoring point of view, the idea that he's, you know, one of the top 15 players in Europe, I'm not 100% sure about. You know, so that's sort of my take on it on. It's Peter O'Mahony, justifiable, obviously, Gary Ringrose, Jacob Stockdale. Joey Carberry is the other one that sort of, you know, there's no room for Johnny Sexton in there, but Joey Carberry gets the nomination. I know these things are very subjective, but don't know. Thought of some few names that sort of stood out to me has been somewhat surprising.
So you think Johnny Sexton had a better Champions Cup pool stages than Joey Carberry did? I know
you're going to point to one game particularly that Joey Carberry obviously had.
No, in general. Because you can equally point to the Castro game where he was poor.
Yeah.
Are you saying overall that Johnny Sexton had a better Champions Cup pool stage?
It just surprised me. When I saw it initially, I thought that's a touch surprising.
Okay, well, the key difference here is this is the team of the Champions Cup so far this season, not the best team in Europe. If it was the best team in Europe, it'd be boring. It'd be Johnny Sexton, it'd be Billy Vunipola, it'd be James Ryan. Tadhg Furlong would obviously be in all those teams, and I know he is still there. He's brought that form through. Like, the thing is, you're coming off a summer tour to Australia. These players tend to ease themselves into the season, particularly in Leinster and Munster's case, and then you're coming off November as well for a couple of more things. So, as tends to be the case, there's a couple of breakout stars in the Champions Cup pool stages. As you've rightly pointed out, Simon Zebo has been brilliant. Thankfully, this is not a trim contest. This is a contest of who's been the best rugby player so far in the Champions Cup pool stages, and Simon Zebo has been excellent. There are only 2 players who've scored more tries than Simon Zebo in the Champions Cup pool stages, and those names are Jacob Stockdale and Sean Cronin, who you point out does not deserve to be there.
Well, I will point out that this is not, let's just double check it here again, the European Player of the Year nominees, not the who scored the top tries in Europe this season, it's Player of the Year.
Have you watched Simon Zebo?
Yeah, well, I've watched.
He's been brilliant.
Yeah, he's been good. Yeah, no, I'll give you that.
He's been excellent. Simon Zebo 100% deserves to be on that list. The idea that Sean Cronin's position on that list is even up for debate
because he scored 6 tries.
Yes, he's a hooker.
I know, but actually, isn't that sort of the whole point? That that's not his gig, and no matter if this isn't a case of if somebody goes on and scores 100 tries that they're suddenly. It's not a try-scoring contest. Cronin's not on there. He's not on the team to score tries. It's a fantastic added bonus that I'm sure Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster.
So he's the starting hooker on a team that is where now? Oh yes, home quarter final in the Champions Cup. What more do you want him to do? That game in Toulouse, is that the black mark you're using against him? And who would you have in his place? Are we putting in Niall Scannell there instead? Who is the hooker that you want to see in there instead of Sean Cronin? He's been outstanding, and it's not this idea that it's always been up the jumper sort of stuff and pushing the ball over the line. In terms of his statistics, he's beaten 9 defenders, he's had 42 carries, 3 clean breaks. These are outrageous statistics from a hooker's standpoint. It is all around the pitch, outstanding stuff from Sean Cronin. He deserves to be there.
None of that, and
Simon Zebo deserves to be there. And Joey Carberry, coming back to one of the more ludicrous points.
I wouldn't be, neither of us are a front row expert, but none of those stats that you've mentioned there, including the tries of anything to do with the nuts and bolts of being a hooker.
No, my point is that you could say, oh, he's got tries because Leinster have been in an excellent field position and has taken the ball and just driven the ball over the line. That's why I brought those statistics up. He's actually taken a couple of those tries from impressive positions, from Gary Ringrose' position, for example.
So, can I just also point out, I'm not suggesting that these players are having bad seasons.
No, but you say they don't deserve to be in the top 15 players in the Champions Cup.
What I actually said was I was surprised to see them on the list.
In fact, those 3 players would probably be top of my list for a Champions Cup pool stages.
Come off it now.
In terms of the Heineken Cup pool stages,
those 3 players would not be your top 3 players.
They would be well up there. Sean Cronin without question, Simon Zebo without question, and Joey Carberry with the biggest...
I don't think any of those players is actually going to win the award.
Joey Carberry with the single best performance by any player in a single match in the Champions Cup pool stages. The most away points by any player, the most points I think by any player in one game in the away trip to Gloucester, helping his team to the biggest away win we've seen in the pool stages.
You don't seriously think that one of those players is actually going to win the award?
I think Joey Carberry's in an excellent position to do it. Also, the way he's had his poor showing against Castro and has come back since then to be imperious, hasn't missed a kick since. I think those 3 players, if you're picking 15, those 3 players are absolute guarantees to be in there from the best players at the pool stages.
Well, they are in the 15, but I'm saying I don't think any of them are going to win it.
I think Sean Cronin is probably the biggest outsider there.
Why?
From the 3 of those.
Why?
I'm not.
Well, you just said he was in the top. He made up your top 3.
Yeah, I would have Zebo and Carberry ahead of him. I would say
Stockdale must be.
I would say Zebo. If Racing win the tournament, Zebo's got an excellent chance because he's been one of their best players, and Carberry has been the best out half so far in the Champions Cup because of the heights that he's reached. Maybe there can be questions over the consistency level because of the Castro game, but I think those questions are going to be answered sooner rather than later, and I think in fact he's already answered that. He's kicked the winning score against Exeter on top of that incredible performance in Kingsholm. I think those 3 players, it was the least surprising names on the list.
What is it about these 3 players who all have Munster connections that you most admire?
Well, that's a good point, actually. I didn't even think of that, but I guess it's less to do with what's the Munster connection that I admire. It's more to do with what other things do they have in their locker other than being from Munster that makes them so great.
Here's what's coming up between now and just after 9 o'clock. We're going to get stuck into the sports pages in just a few minutes and let you know what's happening there from all of those. We're going to have Tommy Bowe in studio in about 10 minutes' time. That's to we will put that team to him, of course, and see where he falls down on it. But we're also going to discuss his depth chart for the back 3. So it'll round off our 1 to 15 of the Irish team, the Irish squad for the World Cup. So that's Tommy Bowe coming very shortly. Something for the weekend is a new item that we've just literally named this minute, and that's myself and Owen's picks for the weekend. So things that you should watch or listen or read or maybe stuff that you should avoid over the weekend as well. So that's coming your way about 8:30. The sports news with Will O'Callaghan will be shortly after that. And Paul Rouse is going to join us in studio. He's been writing this morning, the Irish Examiner, about the hike in prices for the league. So that's all coming your way between now and just after 9 o'clock. So it is time for the newspapers, and we're going to start with the Irish Times this morning, which leads the way at the top here with Louise holds his nerve to seal Chelsea's shootout win. So this was David Luiz scoring the winning penalty at Stamford Bridge last night as Chelsea beat Spurs by 4-2 on penalties was the way that one wrapped up. Solskjaer taking his love for the FA Cup to the dugout. A nice sort of nostalgic photograph there for former United player Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who's getting ready for the Arsenal game obviously tonight. United boss reckons Pogba is captain material. We've obviously seen this before. And Henry suspended by Monaco following dismal run. It's one of the most bizarre stories, I have to say, that I've seen in football. A bizarre, mad world doing a bizarre, mad thing, suspending Thierry Henry as opposed to just sacking him. Kenny, it's not my job to get players to opt for Ireland. This is Stephen Kenny saying that he won't necessarily be doing a huge amount of work to attract dual eligibility players, writes Dan McDonald there. Lowe reiterates interest in declaring for Ireland, so this is the Leinster wing who'll become eligible for Ireland in 2020. So we need not worry about that for a couple of years. England's siege mentality is the Times Ireland edition here. Cullen expects Jones to galvanise his players before the Six Nations opener against Ireland next weekend, writes Kieran O'Rahilly there. Pogba back for captaincy as well. And the Irish Examiner this morning, I mentioned that article with Paul Rouse that we're going to get to a little bit, but sweet spot is the front page photograph here. David Luiz again in celebration mode last night.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is spot on for the final. Chelsea through after a shootout drama. They're up against Manchester City now in the Carabao Cup final. They beat Spurs 4-2 on penalties last night. Back page of the Herald is Alexis still ace, says Emery. Gunners boss wary of United misfit as Ole talks up Pogba. And you've also got Fenton part of Gavin's plan for Clonus trip. There was some suggestion that Brian Fenton wouldn't be available for the Dubs this weekend, but it seems like he is going to be in the squad at the very least for Jim Gavin up in Clonus. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is through Blues. Sarri's men advance on penalties. Solskjaer saying there as well, Pogba can be my captain. Back page of the Mirror this morning is Alexis will love to be hated. Ole predicts Sanchez will relish the taunts. And Mr. Motivator, Sarri gets his final reward. Maurizio Sarri telling Eden Hazard he doesn't have leadership qualities, slating his players after they were beaten by Arsenal last weekend, and it's all paid off for them now because they're in the Carabao Cup final. Although he did say afterwards we're probably not going to win the Carabao Cup final. So all these mind games from Sarri.
You have to do who really cares.
And he's also said I'll probably be sacked by this stage next season as well. He's just like double jinxing every single opportunity he possibly can. Maurizio Sarri. Bluey's the colour, stars spot on after Sarri's swipe. That's the back page of The Sun. And then a couple of the other sports pages. We go to the UK, and the Daily Telegraph goes with the cricket. Caribbean calamity. 18 wickets fall on day 2 as England are skittled out for 77 in stunning collapse. They're up against the West Indies. And the back page of The Guardian goes with the same story. Blast from the past. West Indies stir painful memories as England are torn apart for 77 on a bewildering day 1 in Barbados where 18 wickets fell. And then finally, the Racing Post goes with the big racing story of the week. The front page, Presenting Percy sets Gold Cup punters purring. An unbelievable performance from Presenting Percy yesterday in Gorham Park, the favourite for the Gold Cup I think at this point. And as the headline says there, Irish Racing is pretty excited about this horse.
There was a story with a roadshow last night at the Sugar Club. I think it might have been Patrick Mullins was at it, Davy Russell was at it, and I think it was Davy who had said that he had named his son's middle name as Percy on the back of the association there.
Wow, that's a big commitment. Isn't right it? There.
Because it's such a bloody unusual name, like. Well, not a bad name, but, you know. A few people in touch on YouTube, Owen. I mean, let's sort of dive right in there.
Your tone right there is like a few people in touch that would suggest that you're winning the argument here. You seem pretty cocky.
I mean, you've taken a lot from me saying there's a few people in touch on YouTube. Well, I mean, you might be right, but regardless. The Troisonator saying that Zebo wouldn't make it into the 23. No guarantee that he'd make it on the plane. Obviously, this is World Cup context. The Irish backline is so deep. A player as good as Conway is unlikely to make it. Apparently, and this is kind of the interesting aspect of this, and I don't know if it's true actually, so, you know. Apparently, the shortlist is only based on the last 2 rounds, which is why Sexton and Lowe aren't on it. A bit of a weird process.
That's
neither of us can sort of corroborate that. I don't know one or the other. So
I don't know why that would be the case. Or I suppose maybe it's 2019, so all the rounds that were in 2018 are forgotten about.
A lot of people are pointing out, did I use these exact words? I didn't use these exact words, but people are saying that I had said rugby is not a try-scoring contest, which is not actually what I said.
No, you said...
Did I? Tommy's telling me that's exactly what I said.
You said the hooker position is not about try-scoring.
And I said that actually what I said was, I did not say that rugby is not a try-scoring contest. I said that the European Player of the Year award is not a try-scoring contest.
Yeah, no, you did, in fairness. You did say that. We can clarify that.
Come on, YouTube. Let's get on top of this one. A couple of stories. Tommy Bowe is going to be with us in a few minutes, so we'll have somebody who actually has some credibility in this discussion to lend their way to it. A couple of stories that just jumped out at us. One of them are particularly their own about Stephen Kenny yesterday, obviously in front of the press. One of his first official duties as the new Republic of Ireland under-21 manager, and to unveil his backroom team as well, including our own Keith Andrews, is joining up as Stephen Kenny's assistant manager for the next couple of years. So best of luck to him for that. It does mean that, unfortunately, his Thursday afternoon slot, the Keith Andrews show, is no longer on, and as we were saying yesterday, it's in bubble wrap until such time in the hopefully very distant future when he's no longer coaching.
You just have to look for another former professional who's out of work at the moment. So the Thierry Henry show is coming to a show near you very, very shortly.
Well handled. But anyway, Stephen Kenny, the big line that's coming out of this yesterday was that he is not necessarily going to, it looks like, love bomb a lot of sort of potential Irish players who are English born or non-Irish born, I suppose might be the way to put it. That actually what he wants to do is nurture more homegrown players. I don't know why you can't do those things. The thing that strikes me is do both of those things in parallel. Why can't you nurture homegrown players? And he's talking about the style that he wants to play, that there will be Dundalkness about it. He wants to see technical players. He wants his players to play football. I just don't know why, if there are players that are keen and eager, the Declan Rices of this world who actually want to play for Ireland, why you wouldn't seek those out and bring them in.
Yeah, I'm sure that is going to be the case. He does talk about the eagerness to play for Ireland, the pride in the jersey, wanting to be an Ireland under-21 international, and that's what he wants, rather than actually going after the players at this age. And I think there is an element of truth in that should be the way you go about business, particularly at the underage level, that maybe when it gets to senior level, it's more of a results-based thing. That will Stephen Kenny be judged on his results as harshly as Mick McCarthy? Well, of course not. The spotlight is going to be bigger on Mick McCarthy. This is in their current roles, is what I mean.
In a lot of ways, it doesn't matter what he does in his current role, does it really, for the next couple of years?
No, but
it's a pass either way.
The thing is, if you get good results and you qualify for tournaments, and Ireland are beating teams that they don't ordinarily beat at under-21 level, then his stock rises massively. The defeats probably won't be looked into as much, and it is sort of a process-driven thing, the underage management, and bringing through players and bringing them through at the very best of their ability, and that is what the role of the under-21 manager for me should be. That should be the most important thing. Forget about what the actual results are, and think about what the players that are coming through. Now, Declan Rice would have fallen into that category of player who would have seemed really dedicated to the Ireland under-21 jersey, and that's fine, but I just think the Declan Rice situation is a little bit different. I don't think there's going to be too many of those situations.
That's exactly the point, yeah, and let's not base an entire strategy on
exactly.
Off the back of one player deciding that he may or may not be Irish. But yeah, the other converse side of that is that he does play this nice technical football where they're knocking it around, and we end up getting beaten by teams that we would normally beat, and then suddenly it is everybody questioning everything, and but I don't know, do you know what? I just don't think. I think that people will pay a little bit more attention, obviously, to the under-21 setup over the next couple of years, just on the basis of Stephen Kenny making that progression afterwards. But by and large, people don't really care about under-21 results one way or the other. Not
the results. They'll certainly watch the players and seeing where they're going. And when it comes to the idea of actually, I don't want to use the word poaching players, but certainly looking into dual nationality quite a bit, I think we'll be much quicker to park any reservations we might have about that at a senior level, particularly if it leads to better results. Now, the thing is, his predecessor here, Noel King, has been installed into some sort of recruitment role, hasn't he, that he might be able to take on the burden. So perhaps it just isn't Stephen Kenny's remit here to actually go and recruit the thing, that it's actually going to be up to King to do it.
Yeah. So that was interesting stuff. Keith Andrews is going to be a roaring success.
He's doing his coaching badges at the moment, eager to learn. eager to go straight back in and involve himself with that. So I'd imagine so. Like, I do wonder, well, I'm not wondering, I know for a fact that it was his top class off the ball punditry that got him the gig. John Delaney was looking at the Keith Andrews show every Thursday and was like, that guy's good, so I want him in my setup.
Look, it'll be interesting. There wasn't a huge amount of detail about it yesterday, actually. I know that Nathan was out there and he did ask a couple of questions about sort of how the backroom team came about.
It was more a squad announcement, so it wasn't actually unveiling Keith Andrews.
No, and there wasn't a huge amount of conversation about it necessarily. But it'll be interesting. Hopefully we'll get him in at some point and put the spotlight on him, give him the Keith Andrews treatment. You know?
I don't think anybody else is capable of giving the Keith Andrews treatment.
That's true. Right, keep your comments coming into us. Hashtag OTB AM, or if you want to jump in there on YouTube and sort of not be that abusive like most of the people up on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, any of that stuff. Get your comments coming into us and we'll read any of them that we can between now and by the time we leave you at 9 o'clock. We do have Paul Rouse coming into the studio a little bit later on, so he'll be live here. If you have any comments or thoughts or opinions about the price hike in tickets for GAA matches, we'd be really fascinated to hear from you, because we'll be having a part of that conversation is about the impact from around the country as well. So wherever you are, let us know where you're at and what you think about the £5 price hike, mostly £5 price hike in GAA tickets. We're really interested to hear from you. So that's coming up a little bit later on. Darren Cleary is going to be in the studio as well to let us know what's happening in the tennis and the golf and generally the world of live sport, and to look ahead as well to this evening. So that's all coming. But Tommy Bowe is standing by. He's going to be in with us very shortly to look ahead to the World Cup, because he's got his depth chart for the back three, so that's coming your way very, very shortly. But you can also tune in, by the way, to Friday Night Racing. It's 7 to 9 tonight. We're going to celebrate the Dublin Racing Festival, which takes place at Leopardstown on the 2nd and 3rd of February. That is the weekend after this. We were joined last night by Kevin Kilban, Rachel Blackmore, Davy Russell and Nicky English. It was all in the Sugar Club, and here's a small taster of what you can expect.
You must have a bit of respect for your colleagues, and look, I can beat them, and I know I'm capable of beating them, but at the same time, you'd be ending up in the back of an ambulance in a heartbeat. So, like, there's no point in that's just the way it is. Like, you know,
we've had a few instances in recent years, and I think it's great for racing. The point-to-point win at the weekend from the jaws of absolute defeat was probably one of the most watched racing clips on social media of all time. But we've also had clips of jockeys who are more or less had a shocker of a mistake at a fence, and somehow the jockey beside the other jockey has the kind of sense of mind to try to help that jockey back on the horse, at least that he won't fall. And Davey has been one of them as well, and I think that does wonders for the kind of good image of racing.
You kind of have to look after each other.
Oh God, you do, yeah. It's not. It wouldn't be much fun now when you're going at 35 mile an hour at 20 lads and they all want to choke each other. Do you know what I mean? You must have some bit of respect for your fellow man, but at the same time, when it comes maybe half or 3/4 of the race, from there on in, you're on your own. Really,
it'd be some crack if you were jumping the last, and he was kind of like half thrown off the horse, and you're like, get him back up,
give him a push. But I don't know what it is. Look, come here. We all go to each other's weddings and we all go to each other's funerals. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be much more from the Sugar Club. Keep an eye out on the Off the Ball channels over the course of the day, and we'll bring you up to speed with all of that. It's coming up at 8:15 on this Friday morning. I'm delighted to say that we are joined in studio by presenter of Guinness Pro 14 on Air Sport, Tommy Bowe. Good morning to you.
Morning. Good
How are you getting on?
Yes, great, thank you.
No longer Ireland International or former Ireland International.
Takes a minute to get used to that, all right. But
it takes a minute to say it as well, it turns out.
It does, all right. Yeah, a bit of a mouthful.
How are you getting on?
Great, thank you. Yeah, enjoying the new gig. Been busy, but yeah, it's been great. Lots of rugby going on at the minute, so it's exciting times. Lots of permutations of different matches and lots to watch. So yeah, it's been good fun.
Good, you're flying it. So keep up the good work. We've just been having a bit of a debate here before you came in about the selections for the. One of us was particularly exercised about the selections for the European Player of the Year nominees, which were released yesterday. 15 on the list, and the points of contention that I was just to clarify again, because Owen, tends to sometimes sort of slightly misrepresent one side of the debate. I was slightly surprised to have seen Simon Zebo, Sean Cronin, and maybe to a lesser degree Joey Carberry on the list. What was your? I don't know if it only came out late last night. How much you'd seen of it? Or
I saw the list. I think it's quite it's a pretty extensive. It's a big list. I think that. Well, with Simon Zebo and Sean Cronin, I think they both got 12 tries this season. I think Sean Cronin's joint top try scorer in Europe this year. So I think fair enough getting there. Joey Carberry, certainly the way, obviously that match in Cast, everybody was questioning, but the way he fought back and with the last 2 games in particular. I mean, Finn Russell, he's on it as well for Racing. It'd be hard to choose which out half you go for. I mean, really, for me, the 2 standout players, I think, have been Mata with Edinburgh and Tadhg Byrne. I think he's been really standout for Munster this season.
So it's between those, you think, for the...
They're the 2 guys who, in my opinion, have really stood out for the teams. Obviously, Tadhg Byrne coming from Scarlets. Coming to a new team has really been impressive, and Mata with Edinburgh have been a team to get a home quarter-final. The rugby that they're playing, Cockrell's obviously doing great things, but some of the carries from him has been incredible.
Is there anything more to add on the topic? Or
No, I think you're pretty much bang on. He basically said that, Sean Cronin deserves to be there and Joey Carberry deserves to be there.
Well, Owen said that his top 3 was the 3...
No, I didn't say that. I said 3. I said there'd be 3 of the first names.
Who would you go? Who's your top 3?
Well, there's somebody on YouTube saying that it's actually just for the 2019 games.
We don't know.
Joey Carberry is the front runner at this moment in time, because it is one of the great individual performances of the pool stages. Him away to Gloucester,
but
and he kicked the winning score against
as well.
Exeter.
I mean, I think the Exeter one was particularly impressive. To beat them was a serious result, I think.
Right, that's not why we have you in here. You've been doing a bit of work for us. We're rounding off our depth chart, World Cup depth chart, and we're going with the
8 months out, right? Okay.
yeah, right. Just the 8 months out. We may have to come back to this, obviously, before the end of the year. We're going to start, I think, with the wings. So maybe just first of all, we're going to be able to see it on screen here, but just take us through your order and who you've gone for and why.
What have we got? Yes, okay. Well, listen, I think in terms of starters, you have Jacob Stockdale with the form that he's been in. I think he's on course. Certainly European Player of the Year. I think he is, with the form that he's shown recently, could be up there with World Player of the Year. He to see how he's come on from last season has just been incredible. Everybody questioned, was it a fluke last year, Six Nations? I think 6 tries, top try scorer, joint top try scorer with Sean Cronin in Europe. He just seems to be finding his feet and getting better and better. So he is one player who, for Ireland, I think, with that little bit of X factor. Obviously Keith Earls as well. Probably isn't as good a form as we've seen him last season, in particular the Players' Player of the Year. So I think that they're probably going to be the 2, you would expect they'd be the 2 starters that have been in the last Six Nations. But I think, I believe in this Six Nations going forward. Joe will probably be thinking long term. I think maybe obviously England first match up, you want to get a win. The Six Nations is all about momentum. Get your first win and it continues from there. If you lose the first game, it's very difficult. You don't see many teams that win the competition losing their first game. So for him, I would imagine he'll go strong first off, but I think that people will be given an opportunity through the Six Nations.
Yeah, is it like it's Stockdale and Earls essentially that start here, and it's almost impossible on current form to make a case really for anything else?
I think Jordan Larmour certainly has an opportunity, but unfortunately with Leinster, they rotate the team so much, so he doesn't get a real he gets 1 or 2 games in, shows the magic feat, the sort of the talent that he has, but then misses out on a couple of games. So it's difficult for a player, I think, really to put their hand up. Look at Addison. He's just come in this season, but because he's played week on week on week, and I think that's quite grueling on the body, and you would hope that he doesn't get injured because of it, but because he's played so many matches, he's been able to just continue his form and really show the talent that he has.
We were talking about that with Brian O'Driscoll the other day. He was saying that Addison and Stockdale are the 2 fastest people in Ireland camp. Is it...
I've gone, I think, yeah.
Is there a weird situation with Stockdale? Certainly watching him on television, it just seems that he looks a lot slower than he actually really is, just because he's a big guy and he's actually up close and personal. He is one of the fastest players in the world.
Yeah, no, he is. He's a flying machine. But exactly, it's the long stride length. It's quite deceptive, certainly when he gets going, but I think it's his power, how he just seems to, even when he catches a kick off, there's people on him, he just seems to stick his arm out. very strong fend and you're able to muscle his way from the first tackle. And then exactly, once he gets ahead of steam, I mean, you saw him, was it Italy in the Six Nations last year, where he had Keith Earls was the easy option on the inside, but he decided to take on the 15, went around the outside and scored comfortably in the corner. So he has got gas. And it's one thing having gas, it's another thing having the confidence to back yourself. And that is, I think, the difference in a good winger. A winger who will back himself to go, you know, the easy passes on the inside, but he has that killer instinct. And that's what the likes of him, Jordan Larmour and Keith Earls are showing at the minute too.
It's mad how he's become the personification of the little shift in Joe Schmidt's thinking, isn't it? Because, say, 2015, everybody was like, we need to take more risks.
Yeah.
And still, Joe Schmidt is still a very risk-averse person, except for Jacob Stockdale. He does things that if they didn't come off, sometimes you would say they're reckless, but they come off more often than not.
I think that the analysis that the guys do beforehand makes a big impact as well. I think that, you know, knowing that Aaron Smith is going to close the line in that kick with the All Blacks, you think that is all just off the cuff. There's a huge amount of preparation goes into that. But with Jacob, the thing is he gets people talk to him, he's always in the right place at the right time. The big thing with that, to be a finisher, it's not about being in the right place at the right time. You're in the right place all the time. And then the pass, because 80% of the time the pass won't be given. So if you're always in that spot, if you're always in that space, like a defender will always go on a pass, where as an attacker, if you want to be ahead of the defender, you have to take the risk and be there that split second before and hope the pass goes. And with the likes of Johnny Sexton there, you know, he throws that pass across the front to Jacob, who's on the touchline. I mean, you won't see the amount of times that Jacob's been standing on the touchline and hasn't got that pass, but that one time that he gets it, all of a sudden it's a try. So it's about being in that right position. And then other players around there so having lots of different options. That means Johnny and Conor Murray can pick the right one.
We're all obviously kind of, I think, still pinching ourselves with Stockdale in a lot of ways. Like, is he 12 and 14, something like that? 12 tries in 14 games or something crazy, whatever it is.
Incredible.
Like, is this going to, when I say pinching ourselves, is it going to plateau at some point? Like, is it, you know, it seems like a guy who's come from nowhere almost, and the form, if he continues those, present company notwithstanding, is going to turn out to be one of the greatest Irish backs of all time.
Yeah, listen, he is on an incredible course the way he's going. He's still young. He's a part of a team that is the second best in the world. They're playing a possession-based game. So we, you know, as a winger in that sort of game plan, he will get opportunities to score. But, you know, the opportunity being able to score intercepts, the one where he's chipped it over the top, he has a real array of talents. But listen, every goal scorer, every try scorer, you know, you go through dips in form. There's a long way to go to the World Cup. It doesn't show like he's going to slow down at all. But yeah, you know, he's really setting the records alight at the minute.
Do you remember the first time you saw him in training?
No, not really. I remember it was between him and a young guy, Jack Owens, who was a young guy from Campbell College. Right. And Jack Owens actually was the guy who everybody was speaking about ahead of him.
Right.
Jack Owens then, unfortunately, he took a kick in one of the A games. He was the man at that stage, and got charged down, hyperextended his knee, and was out pretty much for a year with that. And because of that opportunity, Jacob stepped in his place, and then obviously has taken his chance. And that's what it's about. You know, you see with Leinster, all these young guys coming through. You see in Leinster, Munster, you have to take your chances. You know, you don't get many opportunities now. And certainly Jacob has taken his chance.
Is he? Hugo Mania was saying during the week, I don't know if you saw that he's the best winger on the planet at the minute. Is that the case for you? I mean, there's some healthy competition there. Where does he stand in international context?
I think you just have to look at the statistics. He might not touch the ball, you know, as much as other wingers that you see, but that's what I was saying, is about being in the right place. You don't always get the ball. If he constantly is hitting good lines, it's up to the players around him, good ball players, to be able to put the ball in his hands, because he is so dangerous. But I mean, Ioane was for the All Blacks, was up for World Player of the Year. Yeah, going forward, he is an incredible talent. I mean, I would think that Jacob is certainly as good as him, if not better, on current form.
Does Stockdale have work to do defensively, do you think, or what's your sense of that? I mean, you mentioned he's a young guy, and obviously still very young from a Caps point of view.
from a fielding the ball in the air, he's incredible. Attacking wise, incredible. Defence, he is very good. I don't see it as a huge weakness, but when people are always analysing and looking at people, they have to try and find some weakness.
What is his main weakness? What would you say, that flip it that way almost, if he has something that a work on, I suppose? What's the thing that jumps out?
I think that the thing from last year which was tough was that Les Kiss would have been the head coach with Ulster at the time, and the type of defence that he tried to employ was different from what Andy Farrell was. So all of a sudden he was 21 years old going into Ireland camp, and Andy Farrell has a real press, wingers high, giving deception to the out halves, trying to show them one picture and then change last minute. So that obviously was something that was hard for him to pick up with at the start, and maybe got caught out. But now Jared Payne is in with Ulster, who's trying to employ a similar type of defensive pattern, and I think that's made it a little bit easier for Jacob. So defence is something that, of course, he'll work on, is tackling and not missing the odd tackle. But that's a small weakness.
I'll ask you just about two players before we leave this and move on to your full-back selections who don't feature and who most likely won't feature. But if they were eligible and available and all that sort of stuff, would they be in this team? James Lowe being one of them, who doesn't qualify until 2020. Is he in there? If he's on your depth chart somewhere, presumably, if he's...
absolutely, yeah.
Is he starting?
Yeah, he's certainly not far away from starting. I mean, when you have the likes of Earlsey and Stockdale there, we're spoiled, really. But James Lowe, I mean, he's just... getting to see him up close this year from being pitch side and watching matches, the level of involvement he has, his power, being able to score tries where he shouldn't be, but breaking tackles, always looking for the offload. But he just seems to have a real gel with the people about him. He's constantly going over, slapping them on the ass. He's constantly going over and putting an arm around the young guys, feeding confidence and just feeding a good vibe around the squad. I think that he has got a serious X factor, and if I know he's in talks, I think, with Leinster about renegotiating his contract and hopefully becoming Irish qualified. He'd be a serious boost to any squad. Strikes
me as like a great fella to have around the squad as well, right? Like, he seems to be a bit crack. Even there's a photograph of Leo Cullen. He's even managed to knock a smile out of Leo Cullen.
I know, who does that? We're trying that for months.
So if he is fit, what is it? Are we still with Stockdale, and hypothetical scenario granted, Stockdale and Earls, or what are you thinking?
I think that James Lowe, he's left winger. Yeah, I'd say he could force his way into that team. I think he has a certain X factor ability. The thing again, though, what we were saying about Joe Schmidt, he has to take more risks. You were saying having Joe's, with the amount of phases that Ireland go through, they have so many ball carriers. I mean, you look through the pack, pretty much every player in that pack can carry. You have Henshaw, you have Aki, you have Ringrose with an outside break. The one thing that James Lowe offers is an incredible carrying ability as well to get gain line. When they're going through 20, 30, 40 phases of play, having somebody that can get you over the gain line like that will always make a difference. And the way he picks it up from the bottom of a ruck where he shouldn't even be there, goes through, drops the ball and then goes again. He has a bit of X factor, that guy, yeah.
Is he a bit wild for Joe?
He might be a bit wild for Joe. Well, he might be able to. I think as long as he's able to switch it on the pitch, he does his analysis. I think that Joe's camp is very similar to what Leinster's camp is. I think that they work hard off the pitch as well. They do their analysis. And listen, if you want to switch off whenever you've done your work and you can switch off, then good on you.
Good luck to you. Right, let's move on to your full-back selections, Tommy. We've a bit of a wild card in here. Talk us through them.
Have I?
Have I is always a good start.
Yes, I've got the 5 here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way I was looking at it, on the last World Cup, Joe had 4 centres, but really 3. You had Cave, you had Jared Payne, and you had Robbie Henshaw, with Luke Fitzgerald was in there as a centre, but really he played on the wing. Yeah. Jared Payne got injured, and Keith Earls came from the back 3 into the centre. So he picked pretty much 6 back 3 players and only 3 centres. I mean, this time round, I don't know, when you have the likes of Henshaw, Ringrose, Aki and Farrell, whether I think that Rob Kearney, he's played 12 of the last 15 games for Ireland, but he's only played twice since that All Blacks game. I just would fear that, we need a fullback who has played quite a bit in that position, or who is an assured fullback, and not just somebody that if Rob Kearney gets injured, we'll move a winger into fullback or a centre into fullback. So from my depth chart, really the only person there, you have Haley, who's obviously playing week in, week out for Munster. And, was very highly talked up when he came in from Sale. He's been very solid for Munster. Speaking to a lot of the players, he's been incredible in the training field. And he's a good player. Whether I can see him getting, forcing his way into contention, I'm not too sure. I think that we'll maybe see Addison play at 15 during the Six Nations. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him play against England at 15. I think that Rob Kearney again has only played 2 matches since the All Blacks. He's playing again tonight. And it could be, we all know Rob Kearney can turn up and can play, and can play incredibly
particularly
well.
in an Irish jersey.
Absolutely, and Joe Schmidt loves him. He's Joe Schmidt's number 1, and rightly so. But I do think that we need to try and find somebody in 15 that if Rob was to pick up an injury, that we'd be very confident.
Is it the one area of the pitch, like and just as you talk about it, that when we've done so much work post 2015, and that was the absolute state of aim, we need to create depth in positions. Is it the one position that actually we're a little bit lacking in terms of experience and options?
Well, we're not lacking. I mean, you have Simon Zebo there, who is incredible X factor. I mean, he's 12 tries already this season. Himself and Finn Russell. I mean, he just looks like he is enjoying it. He looks like he's enjoying life off the pitch over there as well. So whether he would fit back into the Irish setup, listen, I can't see it. But I think that to have somebody as backup to Rob Kearney, who Ireland put so much trust in, one injury from him, all of a sudden you're looking at a Larmour or an Addison or a Conway potentially to go into that position, who haven't played a huge pile at 15, who, if you're going into a massive game in the World Cup, you want to have somebody who has a lot of experience in there. So Rob's played 12 of the last 15. Addison started the Argentina game, played very well for the first 10-15 minutes before Sweetenham had to go off. I think that somebody will be given an opportunity maybe to try and get a bit more game time at 15 over the next couple of weeks. Brian, when he was in during the week, mentioned that Robbie Henshaw has a wish, or he fancies himself as a bit of a 15, obviously, and Joey Carberry's played there as well. I don't. Maybe you were sort of barred from putting those on your list, but in terms of Joe Schmidt's pecking order, I did have 5. I think I really could have put 8 in. I'm picking to make this list. But like, if it is a case that Kearney goes down with an injury or whatever it is, either in the Six Nations or beyond it, is there room for either of those to go to 15, or are you thinking that those 5 players are the ones that are going to come in there? I think Robbie will start at 12, so I think that's his position at the minute. He of course played a lot at 15 for Connacht, hasn't really played there since. I think going into a World Cup, do you really want to take that risk? Probably not. Joey Carberry, up until the last couple of weeks, there were still debates whether 15, he was more comfortable at 15. The match at home where Tyler Blaindahl came on at 10, Joey went 15, and Joey set up 2 tries, scored one himself. He does look very, very comfortable and very a real threat at 15. So he is definitely an option, and he will be somebody that I'm sure will be on the bench behind Johnny. And whether you have him and Larmour, him or Addison on the bench in that 23 spot, I don't know. I listened to Brian, and I think that with the versatility that Addison has shown and the form that he's shown, I think that he is definitely pushing for that 23 spot. I think he is. Unfortunately, he's playing at 13 a lot for Ulster. If he was playing at 15 for Ulster, I think it would be brilliant, because it would definitely shore up that position. I just fear that we've got nobody else playing consistently at 15. That if Rob Kearney, heaven forbid something did happen, who's going to step into that position? We have loads of people who can do it. I think, unfortunately for Conway, he's a guy who I definitely rate, who's playing some great rugby as well, who fancies himself as a 15, but he's picked up a bit of an adductor strain at the minute. He missed out on Portugal. Could be crucial.
And the fact as well, with Munster's position, it just makes a lot more sense for him to be on the wing, given the strengths of Haley. Yeah. Just on that 15 role, because I think you're bang on about Rob Kearney kind of being this immovable thing. We really need him fit at this point. Is there a certain element of Joe Schmidt's game plan? You mentioned that Kearney's always so good in an Ireland jersey. That, say, Addison, if he's playing consistently at 15 for Ulster, is he then automatically able to just slot into a Joe Schmidt team at 15? Is the 15 role a crucial part of how Schmidt sets up?
Absolutely. 15, the amount of emphasis Joe puts on a 15, and you don't have to, when you have the likes of a Stockdale and an Earls and, you know, a Ringrose at 13, you don't have to be able to set the world alight. I think that because the wingers defend so high, the 15 has to cover a huge amount of ground. It's a little bit like Halfpenny with Wales as well. You watch Halfpenny, you see him on one side of the pitch, and the people kick to the far corner and he just seems to be there. Rob Kearney is the same. You see a mountain of space in the backfield and he just seems to be able to read it. He's able to cover the ground. And for somebody like Joe Schmidt to have that person that he can put so much trust in to cover that sort of space is so important. That is why, and I think that, and why I say Addison, because I know Jared Payne is with Andy Farrell a lot. They're trying to, you know, help each other, or certainly trying to help Jared and trying to bring him on as a coach. And with 15 and with Ulster, I know that they're trying to employ a lot of those defensive techniques, like I know they have been doing in Munster as well. So for someone like Addison, he will learn a bit if he was to go into Ireland camp and be given an opportunity. I just wonder whether, you know, we've already got Henshaw, Aki, Ringrose and potentially Farrell in Ireland. Do Ireland need another 13? Probably not. Do they need a 15? Probably do. So why not use Will Addison, give him an opportunity there and see how he goes.
Are you seeing a lot of hallmarks of Andy Farrell in how Ulster are defending at the moment, particularly in that back three?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, I've spoken to a couple of the guys there that the defensive shape has changed quite a bit, that there's not so much a pendulum effect anymore. It's very much about wingers staying high, wingers you know, trying to control their wings, but also in the backfield, you know, give deception, show space, but being able to close it down. I think that there's a lot of the Andy Farrell tactics have been brought in there, and it's showing dividends.
And the relationship between Addison and Stockdale, should Kearney go down, would be no bad thing either.
No. I mean, they go so well together. I think that. Listen, Stockdale, Earls, Larmour. I mean, you could put Larmour in there again. You know, unfortunately for Jordan, he had that game against Italy, and the high ball stuff didn't go so well for him. He played a couple of weeks ago for Leinster at 15. It didn't get as involved as he would have liked to. I've no doubt going forward, after this World Cup, Jordan Larmour probably will become maybe an Ireland 15 or will be thereabouts, but he's so young. You know, that takes, you look at Rob Kearney, the experience it takes to have a position like that. So I would think that Jordan Larmour, his preferred position at the minute is wing, and I think that potentially Addison or Zebo.
Yeah. All right, a couple of comments in. John Tiswell, great stuff, love to see Tommy Bowe on, what a player he was. And Darren Doherty, totally agree with Bowe's selection at fullback. Larmour, amazing potential, but rather Addison for sure against a top side. So just internationally, how do we compare that at 15? Tommy, the same question again. Are we, you know, in terms of what's out there elsewhere, where do we rate? I mean, we're all in on Rob here, obviously, is the thing.
Yeah, listen, Rob is world class. Listen, it's different because there's different fullbacks do different things. You know, you have Mackenzie in New Zealand, you know, a small guy who you think just put the high ball on him all the time. But if you give that guy a sniff, he's a little bit like a Larmour. You know, when he gets the ball in any space, the electric feet he has. He's also played a lot of 10, so he opens up the field. You know, it means Bowden Barrett can go one way, an equal option. So to defend that side, you kind of think, okay, but Mackenzie sweeps back. So having threats like that at 15 does offer a huge amount, but with the type of play and type of game that Ireland employ, with going through multiple phases, with the way we defend, you know, applying so much pressure, having a fullback like Rob Kearney at the back there, it suits the type of play that Ireland want to play.
Yeah. All right. Well, look at we've wrung that as much out of it as I think we possibly could, Tommy.
Thank you. I think so.
Really enjoyed it. The Simon Zebo wildcard pick particularly was a good one. I mean, it'd be just such an unlikely set of circumstances. Really, it would have to be in for Schmidt, even philosophically, to consider it. Right, like the optics of having to draft him in.
You're talking about a depth chart, right? So, I mean, in terms of depth chart at fullback, you know, you put Rob Kearney at a 9. I mean, Zebo for, you know, the style of player, he could be arguably a 9 or an 8 maybe. So in terms of a depth chart, you know, he's probably going to be second, maybe third on your list. but I think that you have to respect respect the rules that Ireland have put in there, and I think that is it's showing that we are able to do without players that are going abroad. I obviously went to the Ospreys, so I may be somebody who probably shouldn't be talking about it.
They can make exceptions in certain circumstances.
Well, me and Johnny, exactly, of course,
He did a piece that's worth checking out with Jim Hamilton during the week. Simon Zebo and the Ireland question came up, and you could tell he was fighting the urge to start smiling once he was asked if should Joe Schmidt call you in. He's like, oh, I'm better put a straight bat here just in case. Tommy, thanks a million. Tommy Bowe, presenter of the Guinness Pro 14 on Irish Sport. Thanks a million for coming in. Pleasure. Cheers, as always. We'll have lots upcoming. Paul Rouse is going to be in the studio very shortly. Darren Cleary too, with all the live sport that is going to be next. But it's been a little bit tetchy around off the ball towers during the week since Kevin Kilbane launched pretty unprovoked and vicious attack, I would say, by the way, on around our five-side match on behalf of the Irish Heart Foundation, which is going to be on Monday. One off the ball presenter was subject to some particularly, I'd say more than one actually, some particularly slanderous and frankly nonsensical abuse.
Adrian Barry, now I've seen Adrian play as well.
Can I just say, this is horribly one-sided.
Adrian Barry could sink a team.
Oh.
Can you imagine John Giles looking at Adrian Barry? What he's going to think.
Telling Adrian, pass forward, will you? Pass forward. Or pass it to your teammate at the very least.
When they talk about great players not being able to understand how other players can't do things, Barry's going to blow Giles' head off.
Jesus! Adrian! Oh, that would be brilliant. Brian will give a great speech to the lads. I know we're going to get great words from the great man.
Have a bit of rebel music on, won't you?
We'll get great words. We'll get inspiring. We'll get an inspiring team talk from Brian.
What do you think Giles will say?
Well, Brian will put John will put. Go on.
Get the ball on the deck. Trust in your own abilities and go out there.
But not you, Adrian.
And do your stuff.
You don't trust in your abilities.
Except you, Barry. You're rubbish.
So harsh on Adrian Barry. I feel there's a mediocrity everywhere there.
In fairness, that is a rubbish team generally.
Dead right.
Jesus Christ.
Have you ever made John Giles angry? Well, now you can.
Just unprovoked, and I text Kilbane after to say I'm going to break his legs during the game.
Both legs? How are you going to go about that?
Just 2 feet, studs up, over the ball, disregard. Now, it's a hard court, it's like a basketball court pitch.
Yeah, so you'll hurt yourself in the process.
I will,
but it'll be worth it.
I don't mind. I really don't mind. After that attack, it was unprovoked, vicious,
particularly after your performance in the Alan Cairns charity match.
Well, exactly. I mean, the evidence
did they
is
not
there.
See you?
The video evidence is there. I mean, 500,000 people, I believe, watched that 12 seconds of video gold. You showing Aidan O'Shea and Kieran Donaghy what's what. You're going to be showing John Giles what he was missing out on all this time. Right. Darren, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. It's very good morning for Chelsea fans. They'll face Manchester City in the League Cup final after beating Tottenham 4-2 on penalties. Chelsea overturned Spurs' first leg lead through goals from N'Golo Kante and Eden Hazard before Fernando Llorente's header saw the game end 2-2 on aggregate. Eric Dyer and Lucas Moura both missed from the spot for Spurs, with David Luiz slotting home the decisive penalty. Mauricio Sarri criticised Eden Hazard following Chelsea's 2-0 defeat at Arsenal, accusing the Belgian of being difficult to motivate and lacking leadership skills. Hazard laughed off that criticism after the game, saying he actually doesn't care what the manager says.
Ed, the comments beforehand by the manager directed at you, did that anger you? Did that inspire you tonight?
No, to be fair, I don't care. Just play my football. Doesn't matter what the manager said. I'm always focused on this team. I just want to do the best for this team, and today I did, so I'm just happy.
Now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will be looking to make it 8 wins on the spin when Manchester United visit Arsenal for the standout FA Cup 4th round clash. Alexis Sanchez will likely feature against his former club. He's recovered from the injury sustained in that 2-0 win over Reading in the last round. Marouane Fellaini, Chris Smalling and Marcus Rojo remain sidelined. For the Gunners, Danny Welbeck is out with an ankle injury. Henrik Mkhitaryan has a foot problem. Hector Bellerin's horrific knee injury has ended his season. Ainsley Maitland-Niles will likely start in his place. In golf, Shane Lowry has plenty of work to do and some ground to make up at the Dubai Desert Classic. Successive bogeys proved costly for Lowry yesterday. He carded a 3-under par round of 69 on the opening day of the tournament. The 31-year-old carded 4 birdies in his first 13 holes, but he suffered back-to-back bogeys on 15 and 16. He tees off from 3-under par. That's 8 behind the leader, Alvaro Quiros. In Gaelic games, the Limerick manager John Kiley has named 11 of the team that started the All-Ireland hurling final for Sunday's Alliance Hurling League opener with Wexford. Tom Condon, Colin Ryan, David Dempsey and Peter Casey come into the team. That's the 4 changes. Kyle Hayes and Mike Casey miss out the game through injury. Ireland head coach Joe Schmidt says he'll be on the lookout for men in the bushes with binoculars this week. Leeds made headlines when their coach Marcelo Bielsa admitted to having opposition watch while they train. Now Schmidt also wary of any potential spies watching their sessions. Even though they're training away from Ireland this week, they're preparing for the Six Nations opener against England with a training camp in Portugal. As it happens, England are also on the Algarve. Their head coach Eddie Jones said he will keep an eye on Irish preparations. Schmidt wasn't sure if he was serious or not.
They're heading down to the Algarve. It's 15 minutes from where we're training. He said, I might whip across and have a look. And because that's topical at the moment, I think he just throws it in the conversation. I've got to say, I enjoyed the banter with Eddie. He's kind of that irrepressible character, and as I said, I think I respect him as a strategist. I think he's a smart coach.
Really hoping that there are lots more spying stories over the next while, just so we can continue to use that photograph.
It's my favourite photograph.
The
I can't believe I've got to use it twice on the show now.
Yeah, no, I would say, Darren, no matter what stories you have in future, just try and include it some way if you can at all. I mean, don't worry about if it's relevant or not.
Has anyone spied on your preparation for the five-a-side, Adrian?
I'd say, by the sounds of things, Kevin Caban has been. He's seen my quality and he's not been afraid to bring that to air.
What's he spying on? What are your preparations?
Just going about life like I normally do.
Stretching the legs.
Not doing very little, Owen, to be honest with you.
When was the last time you kicked the ball outside of the Croke Park game?
Last Saturday morning.
Oh, yeah?
At under-2s training session.
How did you play?
Down in St Joseph's there. How did I play? It was pretty good, yeah. It was pretty good. I left a lot of the competition to shame. No, they are still in nappies and not able to say their own names.
Can't walk.
Outside of that, yeah. No, pretty good, actually.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks,
The Leinster head coach Leo Cullen insists he's been given no special instructions for how to manage the returning Ireland players from the coaching staff. Rob Kearney and Jack McGrath will line out for the Blues this weekend. Both internationals have been released from Ireland's training camp and start the Pro 14 meeting with the Scarlets. Cullen feels it's important they get more game time.
Jack started last week, so got 45 minutes. And when you come back from an injury like that, especially for a tight 5 forward, I think it's important just the minutes are good for him. So another opportunity for him to see what he can do. Rouse been a little bit unlucky, so he played captain the team here against Ulster a few weeks ago. Missed out on the 2 European weekends, but comes back in. So again, it's a good chance for him to showcase his skills with lots of big games coming up now.
Tennis next, and Novak Djokovic is looking to make it to the Australian Open final. He's facing into the unknown as he looks to reach a 7th career Australian Open final. The men's top seed faces a player he's never come across before on the ATP Tour in Lucas Pouille, standing in his way in the semi-final class, just about to get underway. Rafa Nadal will be keeping a close eye on this one. He awaits the winner in the final. While Cardiff City have been refused a transfer window extension, the club recently completed the record signing of Emiliano Sala for €17 million. The striker is missing and sadly presumed dead after his plane disappeared on Monday. Rescuers have officially stood down the search for the aircraft, despite pleas from his family to continue searching. The Cardiff CEO, Ken Chew, says they will not get an extension to find a replacement. The club currently 18th in the Premier League table, 2 points adrift of Newcastle. He's quoted as saying to TalkSport, "The bottom line from the Premier League is that you have to meet the deadline like everyone else."
All right, Darren, thanks a million for that. A couple of comments coming in here. Patrick Dillon says he'd love to see Henshaw put to 15 to accommodate our most consistent centre, Aki. Unusual line of thought there.
Aki has been brilliant. Most consistent. It's half the...
I don't think anybody would say he's our best centre. I think
it's half the appeal.
Consistency is one thing.
It's half the appeal of Robbie Henshaw at midfield, the fact that he's alongside Gary Ringrose and vice versa. That's splitting that up, and obviously, you can't say Aki's not a more than capable replacement, and he may not be a replacement. We're not saying this with any confidence that he's not going to start against England as first choice. But for me, the reason why Aki is just a little bit lower on the rung is because of the Ringrose and Henshaw the partnership that they have.
Conway can't get a break. Aina Finn, and great stuff. Tommy Bowe says Nolan83 on YouTube. That will go down in history as the first ever positive comment on YouTube, so for itself, well done, Nolan83. That's where we're going to leave the rugby for the minute. We've Paul Rouse in studio next. He's going to be talking all things ticket prices and maybe hand passes as well. But before all of that, the 11-time All-Ireland winner Breed Stack joined the show last night. Take a look.
In 2005, the summer of 2005, he organised us to go on a training holiday to Lanzarote. So like something which we probably, was unheard of probably for us. Like we'd heard like the Cork Hurlers
any
won.
ladies team
Yeah,
at that stage,
so like the Cork Hurlers won in 2005 as well. Like, and like you'd hear of them, going on great trips, and they were well used to kind of going away to Portugal and things like that. But it was probably so far out of what we had thought ladies football was, because maybe up to that we hadn't had a massive level of professionalism, but so he brought all that in. So we all fundraised for ourselves. Everyone raised 500, 600 euro, and we all got going to Lanzarote, and he trained us into the ground for 5 of those 7 days. And I remember one of those days, we were due to be training on an AstroTurf pitch, and the pitch got pulled kind of close enough, like towards when we were going to be training. So we ended up training on the beach, and it wasn't like a nice coarse Irish beach. It was like really fine sand, like absolutely torturous stuff. And that was the day we were due to be doing our hard running. And so we did, for I'd say about 10 years straight, we did a running drill called the 3-track run, which was like 3 different tracks of varying lengths, but everyone had to come back in 30 seconds. And I remember we did, so normally we would have done 3 of them, and I remember that day everyone was so mad and possessed, and Eamon was driving everyone on, and I remember we did 4 of them that day, like, and sure, we were coming home with like quads and calves the size of our fathers, like, it was just, it was unbelievable stuff. It was deadly bonding, and I know like the second last night, so he gave us 2 nights out, and I remember like we were sitting in the hotel, like, and it was a big sing-song like always at the start, and that was when we first realised that Eamon he was a singer, like, and he was a good bit of crack, because we couldn't make him out before that. There was just a deadly sense of bonding, like, that happened, and I think had that not, so we won our very first All-Ireland that September in 2005, and I think that was the what set the tone for the rest of it, that horrendously hard training session, but then the bond that was forged on that.
Yeah, that was Breach Stack in the show last night. You can check out that full piece up on our YouTube channel or on offtheball.com. It is 10 to 9 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. It's time to talk GAA ticket prices and hand pass rules and all that kind of stuff. And to do it, Paul Rouse has joined us in the studio. Morning to you, Paul.
Morning.
Thanks a million for coming in.
Very welcome.
Before we get into the business of that, we are getting into the other football business. Are you, at this point of the year, as we get into the league, myself and Owen have just been discussing what a fantastic competition it is. Any regrets about not being involved?
Oh, a world of regrets. I'd love to be involved. It's just not feasible. So, but I all I can do is really, really wish Offaly the very best of luck.
You'll go to games, I presume, will you?
I will, yeah. I'll go to Westmeath. I would not miss. I live the width of this counter away from the Westmeath border. Right. I would not miss Offaly Westmeath in anything.
The big derby.
Well, it is for us, yeah.
Who's going to win it? I suppose Westmeath having sort of the silverware in the back pocket now, Paul, obviously, and having unseated the Dubs last weekend.
Well, yeah, and Jack Cooney, he did a very good job training road. He's a very smart man, very nice man, and Westmeath have had the Indian sign over Offaly for the last while, but I would be a big believer in the qualities and the abilities of Offaly footballers, and I think Offaly have a lot of ability in that team, and the question is getting it out, and we don't know. We haven't seen enough of them to know who's going to take the field and how they're going itself. But Offaly Westmeath, I know it's an absolute cliche, but when Offaly were winning All Irelands in 81 and 82, they struggled to beat Westmeath. And its form is one of those, another cliche, form is irrelevant going into a match like this.
Yeah. All right, we wanted to talk to you obviously a bit about ticket price, and you have a good piece in the Examiner this morning as well, if people want to check that out. But it's been one of the major talking points of the week. So for people who have somehow managed to sort of miss out on all of this, prices have gone up €5 on league games for qualifiers and for the All-Ireland semis, and €10 then on the All-Ireland ticket. You described this morning these reasons that I'm about to list as profoundly irritating, so bear with me for a second, but this is kind of the case for it, I suppose. Summarising some of them, no major increase since 2011. Price is still relatively low compared to a lot of other sports. The money's gone back into the game, inflation, and in parts of the country, we're not in an awful place economically as we might once have been over the last few years. These are the reasons that are put out there to support that.
Yes, and utterly unconvincing and inaccurate in certain respects. First of all, although there have been claims that there has been no price increase, and that was said by, for example, the GAA president, John Horn, no price increase since 2011. That's just not true. Now, the GAA press release came out and said there was no major review of ticket prices since 2011. Now, that is the ultimate in spin. It's utterly disingenuous, and it leads you to believe that there were no price increases since then, but there have been a series of price increases since 2011, notably, for example, in 2017, so memories cannot be that short, of a fiver being put on tickets for All-Ireland quarterfinals, semi-finals. So the notion that there's been no price increases from 2011, we can just dispatch that straight away. And either the spin put out by the GAA's communications office, either it convinced the president of the GAA, or he's part of that spin, or whatever reason. It would be very interesting to know exactly where that statement came from. And it has had an effect, because it has been picked up by other commentators that there have been no price increases since 2011. For example, on your show earlier in the week, Dick Clerkin said it. And it's just wrong.
The league prices may not have been touched in that. Is that accurate?
No, they went up too.
Did they, yeah?
So the online prices went up to 13 to 12 euros, and then have subsequently now gone to 15. Now, there has been a bit of movement around league prices up and down over the last number of years, but there have been price increases. And the reasons why the prices were kept low in the first place were economic. And then suddenly they're vaulted back up. And again, we come down to the basic point here. The ticket prices for an All-Ireland football final are now, an All-Ireland hurling final, are now 30% higher than they were at the height of the madness of the Celtic Tiger. 30% higher. Now, is anybody seriously arguing that the economy, or that there is a boom and that there is disposable income that the way there was there? That's the first point. The second point, the league prices for Division 1 and Division 2 matches are at least 33% higher than they were during the Celtic Tiger years, and actually slightly more, up to 50% if you, depending on what way you read it. So is anybody, again, I ask the question again, is anybody seriously arguing that there is disposable income that there was before? It is also argued by the GAA, and this is again a line that where it says from the hierarchy, which it says the economy is strong. Well, really, is that right? It may be very strong in very particular areas of the of this city, and there may be patchy economic development around the country. But anybody who has any insight into what happens across rural Ireland, and there is no excuse for the GAA not having this insight, must understand the partial and limited recovery in the economy and how much difficulty so many families still operate under. The legacy of debt from the Celtic Tiger remains in place. The fact remains that wages have not significantly increased, or not increased at all, or are significantly lower than they were during the Celtic Tiger. And that's a fact. While at the same time, in recent years, there has been inflation in the cost of living. So disposable income has been squeezed all across Ireland. And that fact has to be taken into account. To argue blithely that the economy is strong just doesn't do it.
It's also, like, the economy being strong is also not necessarily a reason to up the ticket price. What are we seeing in terms of the rationale for it, in terms of their explanation of why this money is required, and I suppose the evidence of that extra money obviously being pumped back, I presume, into the game at a club level?
And this is really interesting as well. If we look first of all of the rationale, and I understand, but I don't know if this is the case. I understand that there was a presentation given at Central Council meeting last Saturday, and part of it was, I don't know that this is fact, but I'm told it's fact, that there was a presentation in which the ticket prices at GAA matches were put in comparison with rugby and soccer and other sports. Now, I find that comparison, I find it profoundly irritating. Not in terms of the entertainment that's on offer, not in terms of of anything like that, but how I had understood from the GAA's own words repeatedly over the years that the GAA was not to be compared with these organisations, because these were professional sporting bodies and the GAA was an amateur one, and an amateur body that was founded on volunteerism and on that it was community based, that it was sport for all, and that the very thing it wasn't was a professional sporting organisation. So what the only thing we're to be compared on with soccer and rugby is when it comes to ticket prices. Well, how very convenient that argument is.
Tommy Walsh spoke sort of on a similar-ish theme yesterday about how the GAA really is about community rather than about a business. I suppose from the GAA's point of view, they would argue that particularly the people who are running the organisation, that it has to be run as a business, as a sort of a going concern, that if they weren't doing that we'd be sitting here being very critical of them and saying that they were allowing the thing to go to absolute rack and ruin by, you know, not having things like ticket price reviews or whatever it is. I mean, that argument could be put forward, I suppose.
I understand that. I do understand the argument. I do reject the presentation of the GAA as a business. As again, I regret to bring him out again, but John Horan said it. He equated the GAA with a business and equated the games with products. And I just don't understand that language in connection with everything that the GAA is supposed to be. I absolutely understand that the GAA must make money.
What is it supposed to be? I actually had a look on the GAA website over the last 24 hours in preparation for this, just to see if I could find what the mandate was or what the remit was, because that is the question for me that it boils right down to. I couldn't find anything, by the way, and that might just be due to my poor research, so I'm not going to say that.
There's a brilliant thing to do. It's a very important point, and there's a brilliant thing to do, and it's look at the basic aims and the mission statement of the GAA, which are set out on the official guide, which is available on the GAA's website. It's actually remarkable to read it. It is something that is presented as the purpose of the GAA is presented as being the building and consolidation of a national identity within a 32-county Ireland, with a view towards rejecting foreign games or the games of the stranger, and as they're broadly presented, in favour of native ways. That's broadly speaking what the mission statement says and the basic aims. Now, I would suggest that the great majority of people who are involved in the GAA may have some sort of a soft nationalism, but they do not understand the GAA as an organisation which is given to some sort of building, and the word manhood is used at least once in the middle of it. That's a kind of a central point. Of course, there's more than men involved in the GAA, but this shows how outdated that is. And I think the GAA is a little bit caught between what is it? It tries to be a sport for all, or presents itself as a sport for all organisation. And if you look at the GAA up to under 12 level, there is no institution, no organisation in the country which is as good. The GAA is magnificent at providing games and a suite of games for children all across the country at very little cost, under 12. And it's magnificent at it. But there's a huge disconnect between what happens to make that happen and the manner in which the association is run at elite level. Now, I know it'll be said, well, the ticket prices that are going to be paid for elite sport, for the elite level of the GAA as it's presented. Now, those people are supposedly back involved in their clubs, so it's, again, there's a presentation issue there. But that money is being fed back down to promote what happens at good level. But again, so what? You're charging these people in to watch matches so that you can give them back money to run their clubs. I see it as a pretty spurious argument.
Do you think that mission statement needs to be reviewed and rewritten? And obviously words like manhood and stuff, like, when was that written actually, out of interest, do you know? I'm
not actually sure, but it's decades old, and it really, really needs to be looked at.
What would be the changes that you would make to that?
Sport for all. I see the GAA as a sport for all organisation. The idea that the GAA is, and within that you can have different levels of capacity, and that's the whole point of it. There's no problem with a pyramid structure where the very best players end up playing inter-county sport. There's no problem with that at all. It's exactly the way it should be in very many respects. But at its foundation, it is a sport for all organisation, and everything the GAA does, or at least a great swathe of what the GAA does for much of the year, is marketing itself as a community-based organisation. And how can you do that? How can you present yourself like that and then load costs onto those very people when you don't need to? It'd be different if the GAA was under a crush of a mountain of debt. I would understand it then, and we all had to make sacrifices in order to pay off a debt that had been done, or that the GAA was under pressure. But instead, it's going back into a pot, and it just doesn't feel. It's something that the GAA has chosen to do rather than something it needs to do. And I think the gap between those things is the word empathy.
Do you think that's likely to change, though? It does seem that it's been kind of a drip feed, and you mentioned it in your piece over the last couple of years. Like the whole 2011 thing, it just isn't true. Like we were talking about season tickets there, they've gone up. The Ulster Council prices last year were outrageous in some respects. Yeah. Granted, it's different from Central Council and all that sort of thing. But it does seem to me that we're being quite hopeful here to think that the trend is going to go anywhere else other than towards the elite.
Change comes to every organisation in ordinarily, not in terms of a big bang moment, but in a series of small decisions which push it in a very particular direction. And that is the story of the GAA in this new millennium. It is a story of an organisation which is heading in a particular way and has no clarity. It hasn't dealt, and it remains a fact that the GAA has not dealt in any meaningful way with the significant issues which face it. It's tipping along as if everything is fine. And on the surface, everything is fine. If you look at Go games from under 12s and the number of people playing it, and if you look at the profile of the association on television and on at elite inter-county level, it is fine. But in the middle, there is a huge problem, and the problem revolves around adult club players and teenagers. The fall-off rate from Gaelic games between the ages of 12 and 21 is 58%. Now, something is going wrong there. So that's the first point. The second point is the decline in the number of teams, adult teams that are being fielded in the country. Now, every single county in Leinster has increased population since 2011. Every single county. And yet, the number of adult teams in Leinster has fallen by just about 150. Now, that tells you there's something going wrong. The only county which hasn't had a decline in adult teams is Westmeath, and that stayed more or less as it is. Even in Dublin, and we all understand the population growth and the economic growth of sections of parts of Dublin, even in Dublin there's been a decline in 20 in the number of teams. In a report, these stats are from a report which was conducted by the Leinster Council of the GAA. So now I will say that report is the guts of 18 months old, possibly 2 years old, so the figures may have slightly changed, but the trend is clear. Population growth is not equaling the number of teams, and there's a real question here. The population of the country is predicted by ESRI and by government reports to grow by 1 million in the next 20 years. That means the creation of 500,000 new households. Those 500,000 new households are broadly expected to be in Dublin and in the greater Dublin area, the surrounding counties. How does the GAA intend to deal with that? What is the plan for accommodating that growth? Because at the same time, because there's no land being made available for these teams, the story of clubs all across this city is the story of clubs who are unable to find land to develop their facilities. And at the same time, you go to Laois. Now, Laois is, in many respects, a satellite for Dublin in economic terms now. But there's a report produced by Laois GAA, for Laois GAA, which suggests that up to 10 clubs in Laois could disappear in the next couple of decades because of want of numbers in rural areas. While at the same time, there needs to be the development of a new club in Portlaoise and how that new club would work. Who's going to do that? Who's going to provide the land? Who's going to finance it? And all of that. Because Portlaoise has now grown to the size that it is. So where is the planning for that? Where is the strategic work being done on that? And so you ask what I think the GAA's mission statement is. I think the GAA's mission statement should be about providing games.
And do you think we're losing those whatever clubs due to the fact that they're going to other sports, due to the fact that there's just less of an interest in team sports in general because of a more unstructured work balance, or is there a huge amount of onus that needs to be taken from a GAA point of view?
I think it's a whole load of different things, a whole load of different reasons. Partly it's to do with the changing nature of employment and availability. Partly it is because of a decline in commitment to team sports, which again promotes a question of how the GAA intends to address that and how it intends to look at that and rebuild that. It's also partly to do with where people live and where are they, and the drift towards urban areas, which is now, the guts of 150 years in progress and is not going to be reversed. The drift towards urban areas is absolutely real. And it is true that there are also people who give up between the ages of 12 and 21 because previous to that they were made to play by their parents and they get out as soon as they can, and ideally they take up other sports. But the question is, how many are lost because of the GAA structures and because of the change that happens in games between 12 and 21, where clubs become much more focused on putting their best team out on the field rather than giving everybody games. And in what way does a club accommodate those players who are weaker? And it is not abundantly clear how that happens. That's number one. Number two, it is definitely the case, and I know this from talking to people who have left the game because of this, that they leave Gaelic games because they know if they play, for example, soccer, there is a regular programme of games being played, and they know every single week they will play on a Sunday morning or on a Saturday evening at this time, and it will be week after week after week. And that's clear. Whereas in the GAA, it's you know, throw a load of dates down the stairs and see where they end.
Yeah.
I'm still unclear as to why the rationale behind adding the extra ticket price. We haven't got it, from what I understand, a clear sort of this is why, outside of the external factors about the economy and that kind of stuff that, as I said earlier, not necessarily in itself a rationale to increase them, why this is actually happening.
A certain amount of money is said to be going back into the club fund for distribution amongst clubs for building of facilities. A certain amount of money is to be given towards the staging of the World Games. But to me, that's not really the question, because this is money that goes back into the GAA's pot, and the GAA makes decisions based on the pot of money available to it. And it can say, well, we're actually going to use this amount of this ticket price increase to give this to clubs and give to the World Games. Well, why don't you take it from the other part of the clubs and stop spending money on certain things? And the GAA, for example, has a broad building programme for stadia around the country, which is not fit for purpose.
In what sense?
Well, look at what has happened in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Who can possibly explain? We still don't know what the story is in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Still don't know it. And when is that going to be made clear? Or will it be made clear? And how can it not be clear already? How do you manage to have a gap of 30 million in the spending estimates of two different bodies? This is like 30 million. It's not like you dropped a fiver behind the sofa.
Yeah, John Horn said it would be unlucky if it came to the big fee that the Irish Examiner reported via Peter McKenna a couple of weeks ago. Unlucky was an interesting choice of word.
Well, if this comes down to luck, well, doesn't that tell you everything we need to know? And maybe hold off. Would it be an idea maybe to hold off a little bit on putting ticket prices up until you work out the scale of what's needed in Cork? What's happening, for example, in other counties, finance-wise? What's the story with finances in Galway, for example? And you go on all across the board. And there is a serious question about the management of resources within the GAA. A serious question. And again, finding the answer in loading ticket prices into the ordinary membership is not an answer.
It seems that a resources issue was the last thing we expected in 2019, not from a kind of a historical GAA standpoint, but because of the appointment of Tom Ryan last year. We thought that this would be like, at least, we thought every decision would be much shrewder, coming from a financial background. Like, I know that's simplifying it way too much because you're putting it on the shoulders of one man, and one man can't change the whole course of the GAA. And also, he's only in the job, less than 12 months at this stage. So maybe we need to wait and see. But it did seem that once Tom Ryan came in, we wouldn't actually be having conversations like this.
Well, I felt sorry for John Horan this week on one level. I profoundly disagree with what he said, but at least he came out.
Yeah.
And at least he made his arguments.
It's not necessarily his role either to be getting into the nitty-gritty of finances, is it?
No, and I felt sorry for him on that. But rather than personalise it around Tom Ryan, who I don't know and I'm sure is a very capable fella, I would look broadly at Central Council. This came from a Central Council decision.
Sure.
Now, what happens when Central Council sit around the table? Who says what? Did anyone dissent from this proposal? And if they did dissent, how strongly did they dissent?
And that's not a rhetorical question. That's literally a question that we don't know the answer to.
We don't know the answer to. And so many decisions are now being made at Central Council. I mean, you saw the decision on the rules that were made at Central Council last week, which in my view is utterly illogical. So what happens when this group sits around the table and they make a decision? And it would be very interesting to hear the individual delegates who were at Central Council come out, and they're representing their counties and the county boards. It would be, and many of them, and others are from different institutions within the GAA. It would be very interesting to hear them come out one after the next and defend this decision to load costs on the GAA's membership.
Just before we leave it did strike me that actually most of this conversation about the ticket prices could have easily have been circumnavigated by a more creative solution if they did require more money. In modern sport, we see such amazing advances in the match-going experience. So this is a tax on everybody, no matter who you are. You pointed out the various sort of economic situations at the full array of which exist right around the country. And there are other ways to, I use the word tax very loosely, but to tax people who are going to games, which would be more reflective of your available income. And there's a quick Google will give you any god's amount of solutions as to how you might be able to generate more match day revenue, rather than just the very basic. We need to get more.
It's utterly crude. It's a kind of a poll tax approach.
Yeah.
To
as opposed
raising
to
cash.
we can. As I said, let's not get into the solutions, but there's a million of them if you want to go and check them out.
I come at it. I do agree with that. I do agree with that, but I come at it from a slightly different angle, and what I would be looking at is the broader review of the value for money that the association spends across all of what it tries to do. That must be married to an understanding of what the purpose of the GAA is, what its mission statement is, and what exactly it's trying to do, and that in turn must be married to a plan for the future. What is the strategic future of the GAA, and where does it see itself going?
All right, we'll leave it on that note. You're going to stay with us for a few minutes, I think, Paul. We've something for the weekend upcoming, a few recommendations for you in just a couple of minutes' time before that. John Giles in studio, as he always is on a Thursday night. Last night, he's not surprised that Thierry Henry's managerial career has gotten off to a rocky start.
I don't want to be too cruel on him, Nate. He was a great player, but I saw him on the television doing the analysis of various things, I would never have employed him as a manager. Never. Because if analysis is analysis. Analysis is not an opinion. Analysis is a fact, and it either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And any time I saw Thierry Henry doing the analysis, which is a huge percentage of the game, the knowledge to impart to the team that you're taking over, there was strokes all over the place, and I didn't know what he was on about, right? I mean, if you're analysis, like knowledge equates to simplicity. Right, and if you're doing the analysis, then anybody watching it says, I can understand that. That makes sense. Now, I'm an ex-professional footballer, and when I saw Thierry doing the analysis, I didn't know what he was talking about. He lost me. There was strokes going up here, and there was strokes going down there, and there was strokes going down there. I couldn't follow him.
So he's confusing himself as much as...
Well, it means he hasn't got the knowledge to reduce it to simplicity. And I thought, well, look, if he's doing that to us on the television, what's he going to be doing to the players? When you're managing a team, right, and just on the analysis on the telly, you're doing strokes all over the place. He's going to be saying the same to the players. You know what I mean? Like, that's what good analysis is all about, that people can understand it, but understand it in a professional way. Oh, that makes sense. Like, I saw strokes all over the place. The fullback and I'm lost.
So if he's bringing that into a dressing room, you're just overloading players with information.
He has to be bringing it in the dressing room, Nathan. If he's doing it on the television, then these analysis is going to it's not going to be different on the television to what he's doing in the dressing room.
Not a lot of people shedding tears that Thierry Henry. It is has been suspended. Is the sort of bizarre turn of events here. I think if everybody would have understood it implicitly if they'd just sacked him, because I think that's sort of inevitable, isn't it? It's going to happen at some point over the next 24 hours. It's weird, isn't it? He's been suspended. When I saw it first, I kind of thought there was some misconduct or something. Like, normally football clubs are not the sort of touchy-feely, there's a process at place here. It's like, you're sacked, dude. You haven't done a good job. That's the end of it.
Maybe they're afraid to sack him and they're just suspending him and are never going to call him again. Kind of like, going on a date and just not calling her again.
Purgatory.
Yeah.
It always comes back to that with you, Owen. Right. New item. We had a new item last week. We've canned that. We have a new item this week called Something for the Weekend, which I've just named in the last few minutes. And it's myself and Owen's recommendations of things that we've come across that we think you might enjoy. And actually, in one instance, the last lot is something you should probably avoid. So for me, the first article was a really in-depth piece of journalism on golf.com. It was written by Alan Shipnuck. It's a tragic story in so many ways of the murder of a young professional golfer, Celia Barquin Aretsemena, a Spanish golfer who was murdered last year. She was out playing a practice round in Solo and encountered a homeless man at some point during the round and was viciously raped and murdered. It's a tragic story. And there are so many parallels, as Alan Shipnuck over the course of the piece draws, between the small village where this young woman came from in Spain and the village where she was ultimately living, and the societal issues that both countries had encountered to different degrees. The drug crime and weapon crime of the US is what it boiled down to, essentially, and it's a really tragic story, but a really great read, a brilliant piece of journalism, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's Alan Shipnuck on golf.com. We will, by the way, put all of these pieces out on our social channels as well over the course of the afternoon. So that's my recommendation. It's a tough read, but it's my recommendation for you to read at some point over the weekend. Owen?
I'm starting off on a fairly basic level. You know how excited I am for the return of the Alliance League. I just think Mayo versus Roscommon tomorrow evening. We want to see, it's on television, it's on Air Sport tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. The fact that it is the first game in Division 1 at the weekend probably adds a bit of impetus to it. The fact that James Horn is back adds a bit to it. The fact that it's McHale Park on a Saturday night, which was of course where Mayo had their first game last year, the very same day that Johnny Sexton scored the famous drop goal in Paris. Myself and my fellow Kerry supporters got into, a bit of a war of words with Mayo fans on that night. But I think over the course of a year, I think my tensions have cooled a small bit, and I can accept that the atmosphere at McHale Park tonight will be a positive one. And Anthony Cunningham, of course, that's the other element of Roscommon's year this year. That's going to be extremely intriguing as to see how they perform. They always play a relatively good style of football, and Mayo, of course, tend to throw caution to the wind whenever possible. And the talent available tonight, first night of the league, between Paddy Durkin, Lee Keegan, Aidan O'Shea, it's going to be a good one. It's just, I think the fact that we've had an extra month, and from a Mayo perspective, it's been 7 months really since they played a game that we've had on TV, so greatly looking forward to it. Maybe the enthusiasm will wear off after a couple of weeks, but I don't think so. I think the National League is fantastic. So Mayo against Roscommon tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
My other recommendation for the weekend is the Peter Crouch podcast, which is up on the BBC. It's probably the most non-BBC thing that I've listened to. It's Peter in the company of a couple of other BBC presenters, including Tom Fordyce, who I believe wrote his book. It's very giving. It's an ongoing series. I only came to it very late. It's about it's been running for I think the best part of about 8 or 9 months. Recurring characters, different themes. Gets into things like tactics, managers, nicknames for former managers. Fabio Capello was the most interesting nickname that came up for me over the course of it, and the lads were sort of guessing as to what Fabio's nickname was. Postman Pat, which, as it turns out, is a fantastic comparison. It's full of laughs, and Peter Crouch is very giving. He's very funny, and I do highly recommend. It's something for the weekend is the name of the item. That's something probably that's going to side you through before right into the summer.
Before I go into my last thing, I want to skip to my thing to avoid this weekend. For any American football fans, don't watch the Pro Bowl. It's one of the most pointless sporting events in the world. It's Sunday at 8 o'clock. Don't know why I've told you the time, because you shouldn't watch it. It's just pointless for a number of reasons. You can't really create the same conditions as you can in basketball or smaller team sports, with the sort of intrigue of putting all stars from different teams together in this sort of super team, because everything is so specialised into positions, and you've got to put months and months and sometimes years of work to actually have an effective and operating offense or defense in the NFL. So it's pointless, and also the contracts in the NFL are terrible to the players, and if you get injured you could ruin your career. So there's nothing to see here. 8 o'clock on Sunday, don't watch it.
Ditto for the FA Cup for me this weekend. There's one clearly small asterisk beside this, and that's the game tonight. I'd say do watch that, but after that, forget about the FA Cup for the weekend. Fourth round normally stacked full of sort of matchups where there's potential sort of giant killers along the way. This one really, it's hard to see, looking at the matchups actually, what giant killing actually even sort of represents. So for me, FA Cup, give it a skip.
Okay, I'm finishing on this one. It's a piece that was on ESPN.com this week. It's called Street Beefs, and it's a piece written by Nancy Andrews for the website. The photographer is here, though. Brian Fink Redux. Redux is the most important part of this, because the photography in this piece is absolutely sensational, as we can hear. So basically, this is a fight club set up by a guy called Chris Scarface Wilmore in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The fight club takes place in his backyard. It's part of his Guns Down, Gloves Up crusade. So last year, this yard hosted upward of 180 fights, and it has a YouTube channel boasting more than 500,000 subscribers and 142 million plus views. Now, I would warn that if you're of the faint of heart, the videos might not be for you, and we are going to show you this fight club. So this is Street Beefs. This is, what are we going to show you here? We're going to show you Italian Tyson is the name of a guy who's fighting here. Have a look at this.
Street Beefs, we got a final MMA match for y'all. I think it'll be a treat. In this corner, we got Emilio. He's 1-0 in Satan's backyard. And in this corner, fan favorite Italian Tyson, fighting his first MMA match. He's 3-0 right now. Be safe, fellas. Fight hard.
So this is an MMA contest that takes place. There's a boxing contest as well. It's not bare knuckle, from anything I can gather. They're either set up for an MMA bout or for a boxing bout. I'm not sure how qualified the referee is. Nobody makes a profit here. They're here to fight, to release stress and anger, says the author. So Italian Tyson is the guy on top here. He's interviewed in the piece. He says, I was bullied when I was younger, and that's when I started to learn how to box and do martial arts, because I wanted to not get bullied anymore. I was in 6th grade. I was a chubby kid in class, and a lot of people were just picking on me about my weight. A couple of kids would jump on me if I was going to the restroom or to the locker room. I just snapped. I stood up for myself, and a lot of kids stopped messing with myself after that. That's the end of the fight there. It's an incredible piece, as I say. Nancy Andrews writes it, and there's just one line here that really stands out to me. She says, "They come to release stress and anger, or to pursue an improbable dream of being discovered online and embarking on careers as professional fighters. A few say fighting is simply in their nature, but they almost all talk about the test in the ring, how much they respect one another's willingness to fight for no money, the punches in the face, the focus, the pain, the adrenaline, and more than anything else, the calm aftermath of it all. The surprising bond they feel with their opponent." It's one of the best sports pieces I've seen this week, and it all takes place in a back garden in Virginia.
But if there are already 2 million YouTube views of that means there's going to be cash flowing around this pretty quickly.
Probably is. I would like to know what exactly Chris Scarface Wilmore is making off this. So there's no admission fee charged, but as you say, the amount of money that they're swindling surely from YouTube has to go somewhere, and it might be into Scarface's back pocket. But these guys just want to rock up and have a fight. Not particularly my cup of tea. They get the occasional noise complaint, but overall the police kind of don't touch this thing.
It's only a matter of time before the tickets are hiked up by $5. That's what strikes me.
Could be given back to the community.
Set up another ring somewhere else. Right, that's your something for the weekend. It's maybe if we think it was all right, we might sort of run with it again next week. That's where we're going to leave that. Before we leave you, we did want to touch on the very sad news that the famed sports writer Hugh McIlvanney passed away overnight, and there's been a flood of an outpouring of love for Hugh's writing, and we did want to touch on it, Paul, before we left, to give people a bit of a sense of the interactions that were coming in. We won't go through those, but we can see them there on screen. Somebody you would have followed?
Oh, the best. Absolutely incomparable as a writer, as someone with insight into sport. He was a profoundly decent and capable man. Was for a long time judge of the British Sports Book of the Year awards, and was brave and considered in what he did, but absolutely the best. And if anybody wants to read him on boxing, to read him on soccer and so on, there are various collections of his essays and his articles published, and you can find them secondhand around the place, and you can find them in various shops, and they are superb as insight into sport and as insight into all the business of sport, the motivations of sport, the emotions of sport, everything. He could write at it from every single angle.
And actually, I was just going to mention it. There's a tweet from Kieran Cunningham. Apart from his peerless writing, Hugh McIlvanney was a brilliant broadcaster. His series on Busby, Shankly and Steam was exceptional. It was about the grittiness of Glasgow and Scotland and where these guys had come from, and it's an incredible piece, and he had an unbelievable tone as a broadcaster as well in so many ways. He was really exceptional. So go and check out, we should have included some of that as your something for the weekend, so do check out some of Hugh McIlvanney's writing over the weekend. Paul Howard there as well. That's pretty much it from us at 9:25 on this Friday morning. Paul, thanks a million for coming in. Really enjoyed that. We'll speak to you again soon. Owen, enjoy your trip down to the Killarney.
The Killarney, yeah. It is the Killarney at the moment.
Name of the new stadium.
That's it. Just avoiding relegation, sure, yeah. That's all we're looking at.
Good luck. Good morning.